Breaking. Intelligence indicates Netanyahu dead. Of course, if I am wrong, I will recant and apologize, as I always do when I am. And I am aware of the recently published Huckabee Netanyahu video. That, however, did come up after I published my latest Substack and prepared my show. However, I will point out that the previous videos of Netanyahu were clearly AI fakes, and Huckabee is certainly no American patriot nor Christian. He's a Zionist and would do whatever he would for Israel. But we shall see. This is likely my most important show ever. Also, I'm going to be covering the USS Gerald Ford in crisis, toilets and fires equals them combat ineffective. They are returning to Crete, and there may be sabotage and rumors of mutiny. Counter-terror boss Joe Kent, who has been on the Prather Point before and was in the predecessor unit to the Special Missions Intelligence Unit that I was in, has resigned, declaring that the U.S. went to war with Iran for Israel, and Iran was no imminent threat to the United States. Then also, will the USS Tripoli do what 3 carrier groups could not in the Strait of Hormuz? And will the 31st USS Tripoli's 25,000 Marines be the boots on the ground? So, lots to cover here. Jumping right in. As America's self-designated intelligence officer, I have dedicated my mission to tell the American people the truth that our government won't. I predicted January 6th as an FBI trap. I broke the news that Antifa.com went to whitehouse.gov under Biden's entire regime. And I announced that October 7th was a setup for a 7-hour stand down by the IDF and the Israeli government. In that tradition of bringing you ruthless truth, I now assess, after a week of intense intelligence information analysis, that all indications point to a high probability that Benjamin Netanyahu, formerly known as Milikowski and raised in the United States, is now dead. There is no proof of death yet, but neither is there proof of life. But Netanyahu is nowhere to be seen. And of course, the latest Huckabee video being an exception to that, as I've already explained. But all of the intelligence information analysis points to the high probability that Netanyahu is dead, killed in Iranian missile strikes. Chinese and Russian media outlets are claiming that Benjamin Netanyahu's, his wife, and Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, were killed in Iranian airstrikes. Military sources in France and Turkey also confirm Netanyahu's death. Trump has gone silent in reference to Netanyahu. According to these reports, the information is allegedly being concealed and will eventually come out. This claim has not been confirmed by official sources or major international news agencies. According to my sources, the shelter where Benjamin Netanyahu was hiding was hit by a Fatah missile from Iran on March 2nd. He was then put into artificial coma, and they wanted to get him out of the country. But when they asked European countries for help, they all said no thanks, excepting Germany. The plane called Wing of Zion was seen in Berlin, and he stayed in coma for about a week and died on March 11th. Netanyahu's private VIP plane, which has been frequently spotted over the Mediterranean, has not been seen for 3 or 4 days, fueling rumors of his death. If Iran has indeed achieved this, as it appears, it would signify a significant shift in the ongoing war. The clear victor in this war seems to be Iran. Netanyahu has missed his 7th straight Security Council cabinet meeting. Everyone else is in attendance. Several videos of Netanyahu as proof of life have all been quickly and easily debunked as AI. The coffee shop video shows his jacket pocket self-sealing and no coffee drunk. The terrorist video shows him first with a wedding ring and then not. The flag video fingers of him in front of 2 Israeli flags are wrong. Based upon those 3 previous fake AI videos, I have not had a chance to analyze the Huckabee video, but I'm hoping someone will. And of course, as I said earlier, Huckabee is neither an American patriot nor Christian and would do anything to support Israel. If Netanyahu isn't dead, then he is in hiding. And that is a major tell on the true situation on the ground in Israel. There is a massive cover-up happening right now. Israel has turned off public satellites to hide the apocalyptic damage. Iran has launched 42 waves of missiles with 3,000-pound warheads, obliterating bases in Tel Aviv and Negev. Israel is being degraded rapidly. This likely reveals the Iron Dome is either compromised or low on interceptors, and that Israel had a big intelligence leak. Last week, there were rumors that his relative's house were hit. We know U.S. and allies are low on interceptors. Regional radar has been destroyed, and Patriot batteries have been hit. His son, who usually tweets constantly and lived in a known location in the U.S., has stopped tweeting. It's likely Iran has been focused on targeting Netanyahu and his family as revenge for the killing of the Khamenei family. A combination of intel gaps and weakened defenses lead to him avoiding normal patterns and locations and his family going dark, but using pre-recorded videos as if everything is normal. And again, those previous videos to the Huckabee videos have all been easily and quickly debunked as AI. But if he is not dead and he is in hiding and people knew Netanyahu was in hiding, they'd realize that the Iron Dome Patriot defense system are having issues or low on ammunition, and that could cause panic. In fact, there are riots going on in Israel. They've clamped down heavily on sharing footage of damage in Israel. And so it's hard to assess how bad the situation is right now. But there are lots of Orthodox Jews protesting the Israeli Zionist government. And there are plenty of scenes of police beating the protesters in Israel. Notwithstanding, there's a great deal of propaganda from both sides out there. But clearly, the Western deep state media favors Zionism and Israel. But Netanyahu changing up his behavior is a pretty big clue that the situation in Israel is not good. The reason for the weird behavior they don't want Iran realizing how bad the situation is. Or more likely, they don't want America realizing how bad the situation is. If he is not dead, and most reports say he lingered before dying days later, he is probably in an ICU, hooked up to a range of machines to keep his body in the twilight state between life and death in the hopes they can bring him back. Significantly, during Monday's press conference with Trump, not one reporter asked Trump when he last spoke to Netanyahu. Of course, we know the mainstream media is controlled by the deep state, and the deep state is controlled by the Kabbalists, which is Mossad. Besides the obvious danger to morale and initiative, if Netanyahu is dead, there is evidence of an established precedent of cover-ups. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was technically dead in January 2006 after a massive stroke. He was then kept on life support in a vegetative state for 8 years. The need for a cover-up should be obvious. If Netanyahu can be hit, then no one in Israel is safe. That means Iran is doing much better in prosecuting the war than the Israeli-controlled U.S. media and government admits. And Israel and the U.S. are faring much less well than their propaganda allows. This should all sound familiar, since it is exactly the same propaganda we have been hearing about young Iran defeating ancient Russia for years. Once again, the deep state is lying to us. Perhaps the most telling intelligence information comes from Benjamin Netanyahu's best friend, Mark Levin, who called Trump America's first Jewish president shortly after I broke the news on air and via my Substack. Levin retweets, Benjamin Netanyahu will be remembered. So I'll pause there and check for comments and questions. So Ropo, I've already addressed the Huckabee video as much as I can see. But I'll certainly take valid questions and concerns. But again, this is my intelligence analysis to date. If someone sees on X while I'm on air, the Huckabee video is AI faked like the others, then please go ahead and say so. Moving on, the USS Gerald Ford is in crisis. Toilets, fires has made them combat ineffective. They are returning to Crete. This is likely sabotage. The toilets were indicative of that. And CENTCOM is being exposed and I have original human sourced intelligence revealing a massive cover-up regarding USS Gerald Ford. While CENTCOM reported a contained incident, reports from sailors confirm a 30-hour blaze that devastated the carrier in the laundry. This looks like sabotage, which is the precursor to the M word in the Navy, mutiny, on an aircraft carrier. Over 600 sailors lost all personal possessions and are sleeping on floors and tables after losing bunks. Dozens suffered smoke inhalation, despite 2 injuries reported. Now in its 10th month of deployment, if it stays until mid-April, it breaks the post-Vietnam record for time at sea. The laundry is offline. The toilets are broken, sabotaged, and vital maintenance postponed indefinitely, making them combat ineffective. Crews pushed to the brink while Trump claims victory, and the USS Bush reporting prepping for emergency relief. Ford is ineffective at this point for combat operations. Sabotage due to low unpopular Iran war, low morale, and exhaustion is likely. They have been deployed at sea since June 2025. And of course, they did not mention, Trump did not even mention them, acknowledge their sacrifice in his State of the Union. Spathox, would Netanyahu's death be a motivation for Trump to pull the U.S. out of the Iran war? Certainly, I think so. But of course, that is not what Mossad wants, the global cabal wants as well. But yes, I believe that is true. Counterterrorism boss Joe Kent has resigned, saying Iran was no threat to the U.S. This is very significant. After much reflection, I have decided to resign my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. I cannot, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. And it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. It has been an honor serving under POTUS and DNI Gabbard, who also assessed the same thing Joe Kent did, and leading the professionals at the NCTC. Recall that Joe guested on the Prather Point, and he had served in a later version of a special mission intelligence unit that I had been in the original version of. He is ex-special mission unit intelligence, not simply CIA, as widely thought. He's a gold star husband who lost his special mission unit operator wife in Syria due to ISIS when the U.S. sabotaged the U.S. withdrawal. But go ahead and watch now neocons and war pigs savage Joe Kent. Moving on, will the USS Tripoli do what carriers couldn't in Hormuz? So, this is a deep military intelligence subject that I've also been researching thoroughly. And of course, just talked about how the Ford is returning to Crete. The other two carrier groups have pulled back away from the Strait of Hormuz because the Iranians have been preparing the strait for 40 years. Inside the strait, inside the X, the bathtub, the carriers would be sitting ducks from drones and land-based missile batteries. Further, the strait has now been mined. Trump recently requested support in the Strait of Hormuz, but several U.S. allies on Monday said they had no plans to send ships to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. And let me be clear, it is blocked. Not to Russian, China, and Iran allies. But Trump called on nations to help police the strait and mines to effectively open the closed channel for tankers. So he's feeling the economic pressure, which was the Iranian strategy all along. Germany, Spain, and Italy were among allies that ruled out participating in any mission there for now. Other countries were more circumspect, with Britain and Denmark saying they would consider ways they might help, but emphasizing the need to de-escalate and avoiding getting dragged into war. What does Donald Trump expect a handful or two of European frigates to do in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful U.S. Navy cannot do? German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said in Berlin on Monday. This is not our war. We have not started it, he added. The conflict has nothing to do with NATO and Germany and has no plans to be drawn into it. Neither the U.S. nor Israel consulted us before the war, and Washington explicitly stated at the outset of the war that European assistance was neither necessary nor desired, the spokesman said. Spain said it would not do anything that could escalate the conflict, while Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini said sending military ships to a war zone would be interpreted as joining the conflict. Italy is not at war with anyone, and sending military ships into a war zone would mean entering the war. This means that allies see a no-win scenario. And indeed, this is what the Iranians have been preparing for 40 years. So the carrier groups have tried to pull back, have had to pull back. And despite Air Force claims, they have still never achieved air dominance. And it's getting worse. An Iranian-backed militia just flew a first-person view drone over the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad for nearly 2 minutes at low altitude. The footage shows buildings, vehicles, American flag, geolocated to inside the green zone, released publicly as a trophy. The drone was not intercepted because there was nothing left to intercept. A kamikaze strike earlier destroyed the Saab Giraffe 1X radar on the embassy roof, the sensor that feeds targeting data to the CRAM defense system. With the radar blind, the FPV drone flew freely. Analysts report the drone used fiber optic guidance, a tethered data link that renders conventional radio frequency jamming useless. This is also the way drone warfare is now being fought in Russia and Ukraine via fiber optics. This is the cost of asymmetry that is quietly determining the outcome of the Hormuz crisis. The United States has spent billions, no, trillions, in building the most advanced military in human history. Iran-backed proxies are defeating the specific nodes that military systems built from commercial components for hundreds of dollars per unit. A CRAM fires 4,500 rounds per minute with 20 millimeter tungsten. Each burst costs thousands of dollars. The drone it is trying to hit costs a fraction of that. When the radar feeding the CRAM is itself destroyed by another cheap drone, the entire defense architecture collapses, and the next reconnaissance flight is free. This is the 153rd attack on U.S. targets in Iraq since October 2023. The pattern is not random. Each vulnerability is exploited in the next wave. The eyes are gone. The next target is whatever the militia chooses. That also means that the militia elements were on the ground because of the fiber optic cable. This is why the blockade persists, despite the most successful air campaign since 2003. The U.S. won the war it prepared for, but Iran is winning the war it designed. And that's always the truth, is everybody fights the next war like the last war. The strait is mined. The airspace is closed. Embassy radar is destroyed. Coalition allies have declined. Iran does not need to match American technology. It needs to exhaust American bandwidth. A suicide skiff designed as a fishing boat. Each one costs almost nothing. Each one forces a response that costs millions. Each response is a resource that does not escort a fertilizer vessel through the strait. The war that matters is not the one on the screen. It's the one behind the accounting. Ropo Joe Kent's letter was well stated. I hope it goes viral. I hope more people awaken. Michael T. Drone War Lessons Learned in Ukraine on all proxy sides, soon universal. Because Marsak, so 47 years of killing Americans is okay. I certainly never said that. I am a veteran of foreign wars of the United States Army. I'm on America's side. I grieve the loss of every American troop. I've never said that Iran is not a state sponsor of terrorism. I've said that we are at war with Iran because of Israel. So, because Mark 1951, don't put words in my mouth. Focus on what I am saying and what the intelligence says here. And the economic reality of the war is that Iran only has to sink some tankers or even one, and that insurers will stop insuring ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has claimed responsibility for attacking a Thai-flagged cargo ship, the Mayuri, which has been inaccurately designated an American ship, by the way. The ship was struck by Iranian projectiles while sailing near Oman, resulting in a fire in its engine room. 3 crew members were reported missing. While the Mayuri is Thai flagged and not U.S. or UAE linked, Iran has also targeted other vessels in the region, including a Japanese container ship and a Liberian flagged vessel, all allegedly for disregarding Iranian warnings. The UK Maritime Trade Operations reported multiple incidents of projectiles hitting ships in the area. So the strait is closed, and no insurance companies are going to back tankers coming through there that would be sunk. So there may be an answer to this, and this is the USS Tripoli. And so that is my subtitle. Will the USS Tripoli do what carriers couldn't in Hormuz? And this gets a bit technical, but the USS Tripoli is an amphibious landing ship, very similar to the landing ship tanks that my dad, Maurice Prather, served on, which delivers Marines ashore. That's the 31st MEU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is the only forward deployed ready force the Marines have. It's the counterpart to the 82nd Airborne Quick Reaction Force. And the Tripoli was hated by the Marines and Congress because, unlike all amphibious landing ships, it did not have a well deck. The Navy thought outside the box on this and got rid of the well deck. The well deck is the opening on the back of the ship from which landing ship tanks, landing ship crafts, Amtraks, hovercraft come out and insert Marines onto the beach. And traditionally, amphibious ships have always had a well deck. The Navy built the Tripoli without a well deck. Instead, they added a surgical facility, 25, I believe, F-35 vertical takeoff jets, Ospreys, and H-53 Helos. So even if the Tripoli had a well deck, it was trying to land Marines through the strait, it would be vulnerable to being hit by mines and Iranian underwater drones and submarines. But the Tripoli does not have a well deck and has no way to deliver Marines via sea. These are Sky Marines. They are delivered by Osprey. The Osprey is the aircraft where the propellers go vertical, and by H-53 helicopters. The new plan, which is an ingenious plan, but untested, and actually goes around all of the defenses that Iran has spent 40 years developing, would land Marines on small islands, not Iranian islands, but little islands belonging to Oman and the UAE. So they're not boots on the ground in Iran, to be clear. Those would be boots on the ground on allied nations. But Iran has 3 islands that are heavily fortified by surface-to-air batteries. They are, in effect, unsinkable aircraft carriers. If the Marines are inserted not on those 3 Iranian islands, but on the little islands in the strait that belong to Oman and the United Arab Emirates, the Marines would then be able to set up HIMARS. And HIMARS are high mobility artillery rocket systems, which are wheeled multiple rocket launcher systems designed for rapid deployment and precision strikes, manufactured by Lockheed Martin. The system can carry and fire a single pod of either 6 guided missile launch rocket systems or 1 ATACMS Army tactical missile system, with ranges extending up to 300 kilometers. Is also comparable with precision strike missiles. HIMARS is operated by a crew of 3, driver, gunner, section chief. But an advanced fire control system allows for operation by 2 or even a single Marine. It achieves emplacement to fire readiness in as little as 16 seconds. So what that would mean is the Marines would come ashore via Osprey or H-53, set up, fire, and not stay. They're not going to get stuck into a fight like with the Japanese on these islands, but then be removed very quickly, shooting and scooting. And this is exactly what the 31st MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, used against Iran successfully in Bahrain. So tactically, it's been done. But this is a complete new strategy, and it goes around all the strategies that Iran has prepared for 40 years against the Strait. If they defend the coast, then the Gilas and Ospreys land behind. And the F-35Bs establish air dominance. And that's another very significant aspect of this, in that the carrier aircraft have to fly for an hour to get to their objectives and then an hour back. So time on target is very less. And that cannot compete with loitering drones. So there's a lot of gaps in coverage. Whereas the Tripoli can go in much closer. Why can it go in much closer? Because the Tripoli is frankly expendable. A carrier loss would be considered by the Navy as catastrophic. But a strange, no well-decked amphibious craft that is much smaller is frankly more expendable. So this is a bold new strategy that may work and may be employed. We don't know yet. The Tripoli is on the way. But we will see if that will work, and that the amphibious craft that the Marines hated and Congress hated And the two amphibious craft they created afterwards were required to go back to the traditional well decks. But this outside the box strategy with the Tripoli combined with the 31st MEU may indeed solve the crisis, the problem that firepower has not been able to solve. And it wouldn't happen overnight. This would take some time, but it'll certainly be faster than continuing to simply rain firepower as the military runs out of armament. So I hopefully I've explained that well enough. I'll pause and see if there are questions. Give me some of that. All they need is accurate coordinates, and boom. Well, that's what the vertical takeoff F-35Bs are for, is for air dominance in that area. ROPA, what is the goal? What is the end point in this Iraqi-like war too? Well, that has long been the point that I think Joe Kent, D.N.I. Gabbard, and other veterans have made. The first question you want to ask if you're going to go to war is this a righteous war? We've already determined that it is not. Second is, can we win it? The way Trump has now defined winning is regime change. Well, the U.S. and Israel have decapitated the regime twice, and the regime has not folded. Then Trump was telling the Iranian people to rise up. Those are supposedly the boots on the ground, because the myth of winning through air war never works. It always requires boots on the ground. The problem is there's no boots on the ground. The U.S. certainly does not have enough troops to go into the mountainous and caves regions of Iran. Israel is certainly not going to go. Israel did not participate in the government war on terror, even though Mossad, via the Israeli art students, set us up on 9/11 to fight their wars for them. So the real goal is Israel's. And the real goal of Israel is greater Israel. That is the land promised in the Torah to Israel. And Israel is certainly happy to let the Americans fight and die for them, because eventually they want a one world Messiah, which comes out of Israel. And that means the Islamic nations and the Christian nations have to be weakened. So it's a win-win for Israel, but it is a nonsensical, non-righteous, unwinnable war, as I have stated already, for the U.S. All the Iran has to do is outlast American ammo and staying power, as they did in Afghanistan. The Green Berets that I had on the show, the horse soldiers, Operational Detachment Alpha 595 and 555, overthrew the Taliban government within weeks. They achieved regime change. 595 had no killed in action. In fact, the first killed in action were from friendly fire by a B team that jumped ahead of A teams in the south because they wanted to get some. I've talked about all this in detail. So we could have left and should have left. And the Green Berets say there were 2 wars in Afghanistan, and the Green Berets won the first one within weeks. But then Delta and 6 wanted to get some, and then everybody else wanted to get some. And then, of course, there was the false flag into Iraq, which I got called to active duty for then. So, I hope that answers your question. Give me some of that. Posted the details of the Tripoli. Seems like a version of boots on the ground doing a flanking movement. Yeah, it is a version. And it's a viable one, it looks like, although this is really untested. And again, they wouldn't stay. It's not going to be like the Marines fighting and dying on the islands in the Pacific with the Japanese. I'll give you some of that. If the Iranians don't step up, they're going to die. Well, the Iranians don't have, as far as I can tell, a solution to this novel deployment of the USS Tripoli and the 31st MU. They are unprepared for it. ROPA, this is another draining of the life and resources in dollars. Seeing the Appleseed, Jared Kushner is a traitor. Most certainly. ROPA, outlasting our evil leaders is my goal. Yes, that is the goal of Team America, is to inspire and raise next generations to infiltrate these corrupt institutions, FBI, CIA, and St. Martin them. Talked about this many times. This special military operation, or what y'all are calling war, is indeed a regime change that's been long overdue. The deep state boogeymen, aka North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Ukraine, and Iran, regime change has traditionally never worked. So I disagree with you there. We should never been in Iraq. I was there too, Jeffrey. I actually didn't go to Iraq. I was activated. I had a really easy, cush job at DIA headquarters. But I agree with you. We should never have been in Iraq. T-Box, how does Joe Kent's resignation affect the current track of this administration? Well, again, Joe Kent is a decorated special mission unit veteran war hero and Gold Star husband who lost his special mission unit wife because of U.S. sabotaging withdrawal to ISIS in Syria. But the neocons and war pigs will certainly go after him because they are not America first. They are Israel first. But it will continue to degrade the credibility of the U.S. prosecution of this war in Iran, which was never popular from the start. And of course, that's certainly what's happening on the Ford with the sabotaging of the toilets and the starting of the fires in the laundry, forcing the Ford to return to Crete. And, that brings up the specter of the M word mutiny in the Navy. And so the Navy certainly doesn't want that. So I hope that answers all the questions so far. Going further, it's important to acknowledge that we won the White House when the White House dropped the Iran drone attack false flag. Last week's Prather Point exposed all the reasons why the FBI's warning about an Iran drone attack on the West Coast was undoubtedly a false flag. But I was not the only one. All alert liberty luminaries agreed. Unanimously, we all exposed it, and the deep state took notice. This is the proof. Many lives saved. Well done, all. The ABC News report about warnings that Iran could possibly launch drones against the West Coast is fake news, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said last Thursday. Leavitt's statement came after the outlet said the Federal Bureau of Investigation had warned law enforcement in California that the Middle Eastern country wanted to retaliate for the U.S.-Israel joint attacks by launching drones. Leavitt said this post and story should be immediately retracted because the outlet provided false information to intentionally alarm the American people. They wrote this based on one email that was sent to a local law enforcement in California about a single unverified tip. The email even states the tip was based on unverified intelligence, yet ABC News left out this critical fact in their story. Why? To be clear, no such threat to our homeland exists, and it never did. So that is exactly what I try to do, is to get the real intelligence out there and stop false flags from happening. And I just didn't do it alone. Others did it as well. But I think we were very successful in that, and that's a win. So very good on that. Aroma Doc. I'm beginning to believe that all the Paula White pastors around Trump somehow cast a spell on him. The photos of them praying over him remind me of the Last Supper Zion pastors and their demons. Yes. Her saying that wherever she walks is holy ground, it's all heresy. It is not Christian at all. There's a great deal of psyop and propaganda happening among Zionists who are not even true Christians. They're not following Yeshua, which is Jesus' actual name. They're following old Torah. And as Yeshua said, I come not to do away with the law, but to fulfill the law. So all the law, that's why the some 400 prophecies were fulfilled by Yeshua, so that they were done with. So there were no more need to follow 613 different commandments. And that there was a new covenant made, and that the inheritors of the Abrahamic promise from God was with the followers of Christ, because Christ fulfills the Torah. This is the heresy and absurdity that we see with Zionists over and over. They don't just misquote scripture, insert new words, which, by the way, is a sin. According to Revelation and other parts, you're never supposed to change a word of the Holy Bible scripture. But they always refer to the Old Testament, Torah, Hebrew Bible, as opposed to the New. And of course, Yeshua has fulfilled the Old. And so the New Testament is superior to the Old, and of all the words in the New Testament, the words of Yeshua himself are the most important. But you never hear Zionists quoting Yeshua. Mike, why is all the air traffic going to Israel, yet there's a war going on in Iran, but no air activity, while I get for operational security? I'm not sure I understand the question, but the United States is giving significant resources to defend Israel. If that's the answer to your question. RC cannot be Zionist as taught by the magisterium. I don't know what RC is. The U.S. military is not going to advertise its movements in an ongoing operation. It just seems highly suspicious that Iran is a massive distraction. I don't know what you mean by that either. So I get lots of letters and lots of suggestions for my health. As you can see, I am improving. And I appreciate all the prayers. I appreciate all the advice. And occasionally I'll read a email from a listener. And this one is particularly interesting because this one comes from a near peer that I worked with back in the day. And he's complimenting me on the False Flags podcast and saying the West Coast alleged threat fits the mold perfectly, just as huge government support for human child smuggling mandated training was looking to see if anyone was up to their op. So may be the drone flag. Consider Shahed and Lucas 136 drones have a range of about 1,000 miles. The Atlantic Ocean is the most direct route to the U.S. from Iran. So the West Coast threat is ridiculous. Routine container ship traffic from Iran west runs down the East Coast, behind the Bahamas, all over the Caribbean, from radar-shadowed area. Any container ship could launch and push empty Connex over the side. So they launch from the Connex, and then they push the Connex over the side, is what he is saying. And launch in the middle while going through Mexican mountain passes, as we have no U.S. perimeter radar, except luckily placed Aegis cruisers, or run a Connex across Canada on Route 2. U.S. military to accept the Israeli targeting. And then he goes on to talk about the school that the U.S. hit twice, killing 165 Iranian schoolgirls. And he said, my guess is the U.S. military was ordered to accept Israeli targeting packages without question. The Tomahawk shooters got the coordinates to the kids' school and plugged them in without checking, in direct violation of the Geneva Convention, which I find really hard to believe the U.S. would do, as do I. So I think this is a very plausible explanation. But shoot two, wait for the first responders to show up and shoot two more is an age-old Israeli terror tactic. And that is certainly true. So since the U.S. has openly and blatantly tossed the Geneva Convention in the trash, anything is fair game. Then reference the domestic attack of the U.S. by Israeli using nukes. So I've talked about Ann Vandersteel, when she's guested, have talked about how there are theories of the Samson plan by Israel to have brought in nukes into the United States which are Saddam's small atomic demolition munitions, which I talk about in my book Chase, which you can get on Amazon, or you can get the set from me by writing help@jeffreyprather.com. But he says, and again, this is a near peer with a lot of experience. Domestic attack on the U.S. by Israel using nukes. I think they are already here. In June 2002, the Israeli brought in 4 nukes through the port of Houston. This is very similar to my book, Chase. U.S. Coast Guard port security got wind, and the Phoebes were ordered to take them down. So Phoebes being Phoebes, they decided to do a controlled delivery. And this is very true. I've seen this happen with working with the FBI myself. On June 30th, they lost the package near I-64 and I-80. I've actually seen that, not with nukes, but with cocaine shipments, where I was following the truck that had just come across with the cocaine. There was an FBI car behind that, and then I was behind that. And then I heard the FBI car go, "Hey, we've lost him." And I can see the truck right in front of the FBI surveillance car. So I've actually seen that. I don't know about the nukes, but what I'm saying is my near peer here, what he's saying, I have experience with the Phoebes in other areas. And of course, by now, we know that the FBI simply lies and covers up all the time. So NEST, it's the Nuclear Emergency Response Team, and Delta came in, located, and took down the load. 2 were armed and couldn't be disarmed. 1 was dropped off the coast of Maine, 1 off the coast of Charlton. Subsequently, all seismic data for those 18 hours was deleted from global records, and nothing more of it was said. If you still have contacts with Command Sergeant Majors from Delta circa June 2002, you can probably confirm the info. All entrance documents requirements for Israelis coming to the U.S. were dropped shortly thereafter. So I think the false flag nukes are here someplace. So, no, I don't have any more contacts with Delta retired sergeant majors. Lots more here. Let's see. RC cannot be in Zionists as taught by the magisterium. Real Christians cannot be Zionists as taught by the magisterium. The magisterium refers to the doctrine of the Catholic Church. Yes, that's correct. That's why the U.S. government is so after the Catholic Church, but they're fine with the Mormons. I read your book, Initiation. At the end of your book, you mentioned that an owl showed up in the summer. What book can I read of yours that explains more about the owl? Well, I'm writing those books. I'm writing about 3 books, following up. Haven't finished them yet. But the owl typically in Indian culture means death or change, which means I had to face death multiple times, which of course I have. Aromadoc, Department of War is also, Hegseth wants to build the 3rd temple. So are they trying to build this before Passover? They started this war on Purim. Yeah, I talked about that in my sermon. Now my Substack, you can look up my sermon at christchaplaincy.com, christchaplaincy.com, and also in my Substack as well. So are they trying to build this before Passover? I don't know about that. Where'd you get your jacket? You look like the X-Men from Cable. My wife got me this jacket. I'm just cold today. Really nice jacket. David Crockett, best news ever. Thank you. How does the world, T-Box, how does the world deal with the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, since Iran has certainly made it clear that no one passes without permission. Well, I just talked about that extensively. That's the Iranian plan, is to outlast, it's a war of attrition, outlast the armament and the willingness of gas prices to go up. And Trump recently did say the Iran war may end soon. So that is the Iranian strategy. It seems to be working well. It may be able to be countered by this new strategy using the USS Tripoli and 31st MEU Marines, as I have explained. Michael, opine on Carrie Bowler. I've tried to get Carrie on the show. I think she is very courageous. And I think she's recently a new Catholic. You know, I'm a former Catholic who has great respect for Catholicism, but I think she was very brave and courageous in standing up to the Star Chamber board, which she got fired from, and also for the Catholic bishops as well. So I don't really see any more questions there. So I will summarize again, is that all my intelligence information analysis indicates that Netanyahu is dead. The initial videos of Netanyahu having coffee, talking on the terrace, and talking in front of flags were clearly and easily debunked as AI fakes. I have not yet seen, I've seen, but I have not yet had an analysis of the Huckabee video that came out after I had show prepped and Substacked. You can read my Substack on All Intelligence Indicates Netanyahu Dead. But of course, if I'm wrong, I will admit that and ask pardon, as I always do. But there is certainly a precedent that kept Ariel Sharon attached to an ICU machine for multiple years. Some people have said that's what they've done with Biden. Of course, Huckabee would lie for Israel. He's not an American patriot. He's not a Christian. He'd do anything. And also, don't forget that masks are a real thing. They're not just simply figments of Tom Cruise movies. CIA has used them for a long time. What do you think of Erica Kirk's new appointment? I think it's terrible. I think that there's something underhanded going on. I no longer trust her or Turning Point USA at all. And this is a way to turn the Air Force Academy cadets into mindless, good little Zionists. Kind of the opposite of what the Team America mission is to St. Martin Next Generations. I think they're trying to do the same thing. Michael, as a new Catholic, she has a lot to teach old Catholics. Very true. Romadoc explains why the urgency of this war is if the window of the opportunity for blowing up the Temple Mount soon for their next plans. That is possible. So that looks like I've answered everybody's question. So I will wrap here today. If you want to review my intelligence conclusions, you can go to my Substack. Please like, share, and subscribe. to me on Rumble, X, and Facebook, and even YouTube, because I am heavily throttled, and I'm sure this show will be heavily throttled even more, although I see good numbers today. So remember, freedom is never given. It is earned, fought for, won, and taken. So take it.